Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for another discussion on community and addictions and having this wonderful conversation. And so we are thankful that we get to be a part of this. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today, or at least address, that kind of just came up very recently, is with the change of the seasons for me, anyways. I when it goes from very cold to warm, I will get like the whole hay fever, sick, congested nose, cough, all that stuff. And then I'm fine after my body gets used to that change in the biometric pressure, the change in the weather. And then it hits me again in the late fall when it goes from hot to cold. I get that whole stuff again. Um, and so recognizing just how medical care, standard medical care, whether it's allergens or sickness or visiting the hospital, um, how those maybe can impact positive, negatively, those can impact those that are in inactive addiction versus those in recovery, and seeing that. When we were talking earlier, one of the things that you told me about that I had no idea is that you don't get sick when you're using certain high level drugs, and that really kind of bogs me because I have no idea. I never knew that. I thought, well, when we all get sick, we just all get sick. I didn't think that stuff destroys the viruses or the illnesses as at the same time our own cells. And so maybe kind of expound on that a little bit, or at least at your experience with that, if you're comfortable. Because I think there's a lot of people, medically, how do we care for those that are in that position?
So ironically, I'm under the weather.
Hence we just came up with this.
Right. So I guess that the way let me address first that what he's talking about is when you're using meth.
Mm-hmm.
Meth has a tendency to kill just about everything, and I don't know that I ever was sick while I was on it. I probably had a sickness or something, but it took care of it pretty quickly. And I do know that there are people that have medical issues
Mm-hmm.
who will use meth,
Right.
because it supposedly at least kind of stops it where it's at, or I don't know. This could be all conspiracy kind of crap. I have no idea, but
Well, even that, sorry to interject here too. The whole rise of medicinal marijuana. That I mean, there's a reason why they're promoting that to use those things, because there is a portion. I want to be careful how I say this. There is a element in that does accomplish the goal they're looking for.
right. So if they were going to do it medicinal, then they should have kept it as medicinal.
Right.
They went further than that. So I basically, to be honest, I see that the same as alcohol. They're just legalizing something that's going to destroy people.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, and and not everybody falls into addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see anything good that comes out of it. No matter what I mean, someone who can have a glass of wine at a dinner party, once a month, okay. It's just a thing,
Right.
whatever. Most people don't do that, and then they find themselves in denial a lot.
Right.
But the thing is that, like, when it comes to medical type issues, it's a very, it's kind of sketchy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like you said, most normal people, they look at medication or whatever, and they see it as, this is what this is for, and then that's,
Right.
the addict, they see the medication, they know what it's for, but if it'll get them high,
Right.
it gets into that scary part for someone who's, so if I'm in active addiction, I'm probably actively seeking a high, no matter where it is.
Right.
If a doctor's going to give it to me, great.
Right.
Otherwise, I can go on the street and get it. In recovery, you become a little more aware.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not a little more, a lot more. You're
Yeah.
very, you know, you're very keen on staying aware of the things that you put in your body, because it can trigger you.
Right.
You know, so I have told them before. You know, I don't want narcotics. Just I want something to, you know,
Right.
that's not narcotic, and they just didn't even listen to me. They just gave it to me, and of course it got me loopy, you know, which is high.
Right. Well, because your body's, well, one, that's what the drug's going to accomplish anyways. But then
Right.
on the second part is you've programmed your body to react to it a certain way.
Well, I think that it would have got anybody loopy. You put morphine into you, and you're gonna get loopy. You know,
I would be out there.
and your termination, the way you would term it,
Yeah.
might be different, but it's the same effect.
It's the same effect. Absolutely.
You're getting high. You just don't. You know, you just look at it as like, oh, I'm loopy. You know, and that's it. I look at it like, oh, I'm high. You know.
Yeah.
So it can be dangerous, you know, and doctors don't, you know, I mean, they have to do their jobs, but
Right.
they don't, I don't think that their thought process doesn't go into, is this person an addict or is this
Right.
person in recovery, or is it, you know what I mean?
Well,
Unless if that's in your chart where they're like,
Right.
okay, you really need to watch this person, but you know, they don't, and it's not their fault.
Right.
You know, they're taught to handle things this way, that way. You
Well,
know,
they're taught to. They're almost like a physical doctor in this a doc physical. I'm having a hard time talking today. It's like they're a detective for biology. They see the case and they're like, I need to address this, and so
Right.
they don't look at the psychological impact of those other areas. They're trying to address the symptom, and they know that this thing will work, and so we need to do this because I know it's going to attack that particular
Right.
issue that we're addressing, without thinking about, okay, there's all these other things that accompany that particular drug or that particular pharmaceutical that is going to go beyond the symptom that we're trying to address, and it's going to hit these other areas of
somebody's thoughts.
being. Yeah.
And you know, the thing is that you can tell them,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know, I have this issue. I personally don't do that because then I feel like they start to treat things differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not interested in that. And not to mention the fact that it can be a slippery slope.
Right.
But generally, well, for me, I've been prescribed narcotics,
Right.
and they just go in the trash, you know,
Mhm.
because I don't see a real purpose,
Right.
you know, beyond being in the hospital. You know, once I
Right.
get out of the hospital, it's kind of like, yeah, you know, I can pop ibuprofen and Tylenol and, you know, some of these things that aren't going to
Oh yeah.
cause some craziness in my mind. Not everybody can do that.
No.
And you know, but as far as like taking care of being sick, you know, I guess I could see where there could be some slippery stuff going on, you know, because over the counter stuff you can get like Benadryl and you know, and stuff like I do a lot of the NyQuil when I'm sick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and I could see where that could become a problem because it's, you know, it's
Well, funny story, you'll laugh at. When I was a teenager, we had a chloroseptic spray for coughs, and
that numbs it. Yeah.
oh, it's so great, right? And so there was one time where I had a nasty cough, and my mom allowed me to use it. And then after the cough left, I still kept it under my bed because, you know, if I can't sleep, I know it'll knock me out. And so I'd take it out and do 5 sprays, put it back on the bed, and I'm out.
Right.
Not connecting the dots. You know, teenage me is like, I got chloroseptic spray in there. This is going to put me to sleep.
Right.
Not thinking about all those other things that I was programming myself into with that.
Right.
And
Yeah. So, I mean, it could cause a slip for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the medicine itself, like for a cold or things like that, that's not really the problem. It's that, well, I slept well on this. Well, what if I took some Valium,
Right.
or something like that? And you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
you just keep going. Because
Why would I take a cup of this
Right.
when I can take a teaspoon of this,
right.
and it's more potent and it's going to get the job done better? And so,
And the thing is that for an addict, they say one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And what that means is that if I take one, I'm off and running. If I do it one time, I've had in my past where I've been sitting down at a restaurant or whatever, bar, restaurant, whatever, and was in recovery and thought, well, one drink ain't gonna hurt, and so I had a drink, and that was it. And a week or two later, I had another drink, and it wasn't a big deal. And then, so I thought to myself, well, this isn't, and so that continued on for a couple of months where I'd have a couple of drinks or, a drink here and there. And then all it took was one night. I got a little bit too drunk because I drank too many, obviously. And next thing I know, I smoked meth because it's like, oh, I should go get some meth because that's the way my brain thinks. Yeah. So, it's that's why it's dangerous when you get into these little things that trigger. Yeah. Even though alcohol wasn't really my thing. Right. It led me to my thing.
Well, and it's one of those things too. When the Bible talks that, it says that wine is a mocker and strong drink a brawler. That idea that it removes those inhibitions. It removes those self-control. Right. that we get to exert over ourselves. We take that drink and it starts to lower those boundaries and those barriers that are predisposed on us. And then sure enough, we can. I consider it again, this is just my perception. There's people who agree with me. There's people who disagree with me, and I love both of them. But I view alcohol as a gateway drug. I view it at that level in my own mind, and there's a lot of people that have it under control, and then there's a lot of people who don't have it under control. But that's one of those things too, like you had said earlier, one drink led to another, and next you're thinking, I'm gonna pursue this. And so that's where that gateway comes into play of like, it's just that more and more and more. Yeah. And maybe why when it comes to prescriptions with the issue that we deal with opioids in our community, why that can be such a gateway leading in on just, I need something more. But it started with, I just need to medicate because I had a broken arm, I couldn't kick this cough, and so I tried this. So it's kind of an interesting build up.
And I think it's your mindset when you're taking some of these cold medicines or whatever. My mindset is I just want to be done with this cold.
Right. What I mean? Anything I can take to nuke it out.
Right, and then it's over, and I don't really think much of it. And but other people are, they take that little bit and they're like, ooh, that made me feel kind of good. And so then their mindset is to feel good, not about the cold anymore. Yeah. And that's where it can be really slippery for some people. I did want to say something that a thought I have, is that because you mentioned legalizing marijuana and all that good stuff, but I find the irony in the fact that it's acceptable and the law is made so that alcohol is legal. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the amount of problems that it causes in society, and the amount of people that go to jail or even prison because of just alcohol, I find it just I can't seem to comprehend why. Okay, this is okay. Okay, you're saying this is okay to do, and then you set the rules all around it. to make it so that they have to go to jail or prison or
Right.
community service or pay fines or, you know what I mean? That doesn't, you know, it feels like a setup to society, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of laws that that they do that with, and them doing that with the marijuana now, you know, I just feel like, you know, it's just a setup, you know, not to mention the fact it's just not. I could see where it, like medicinal wise. So, have you ever met Richard, my stepdad?
Yes.
You did. Okay. So, when he was dying, I told my mom, I was like, you know, you should really see about getting him medicinal marijuana, because at that point I think it just became legal or something. And you know, I said, because it helps with your eating, you know, it takes away some of that pain, it calms your anxiety, you know, I mean, it has good components to it for someone who's really sick and just you know, really needs it, you know. But those same things you put on me, and is, you know,
Right.
I'm gonna want to do it all day long, you know, every day,
Right.
because I just have that addictive personality. So I'm not saying that some things don't have good to them. I'm just saying it seems really ironic to me that society is built around all these laws that are built around all these things you can do, you know. It's just a very strange to me.
It is. Well, and there's one of the comments that people use to defend the allowance of certain things, and they use the scriptures in the book of Timothy. Paul writes to Timothy, and he says, hey, along with your water that you drink, why don't you also have a little wine to help with your stomach?
Right.
And the indication was that Timothy had some diet. We don't know. The idea is that there was some dietary tummy issues that he had going on, whether it was constant stomach aches, even an ulcer. So it varies. You know, he had some that he just needed additional medicine that that wine brings in on that play.
Right.
And people use that, and I think sometimes we have to recognize too is one, just because something's
bacteria.
There's a bacteria in there.
Right.
Well, and just because something is beneficial, I mean, just because something's permissible for us to do does not mean it's beneficial. And so just because something is acceptable and permissible, that yes, we can get away with it, doesn't mean that it's always good. And I think that sometimes when it comes to our laws, we want to allow the permissible, but we also want to make sure that it is within the confines of quote unquote being beneficial. And so we make the allowance for those things, whether it's the alcohol or the legal marijuana, all those things that we make the permission to allow those. But because we know of the devastating effects that using it and abusing it occur, that's where all the laws come in. So we want to make the permission to have it, but because we know if it's the destructive nature when it's out of control, that's where we bring in all these other laws. And so for many people, we get into that, we go into the permission of it. And for many people who just can control it within that permissible state, there's fine. But when we move beyond that permissible state and where it begins to be abused, where now families are losing loved ones because of drunk drivers. Now families are, now we see where there's liver failure. Now we see where there's, and so all these other areas begin to speed off of that. With COVID, one of the things that COVID revealed to many people is the amount of abuse in the home. Because we were in the shutdowns and people couldn't get out, and I've as a pastor, I've seen many cases where abuse is brought on by a drunk parent, and so it's like, so there's the permissible, but again, those laws are in place to make sure it does not get abused, and
see, and you're kind of,
so it's kind
to
of,
be honest, I feel like you're kind of making my point.
Yeah.
So let's make alcohol legal, right?
Yeah, right.
But you can't drive and drink, right?
Right. Again, because
but let's make a bar where you can go to that's away from your home
Right.
to drink.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, why don't we just get rid of bars?
The setup for failure, basically.
Yeah. So if you really don't want people drinking and driving, for the most part, the reason why people do that is because they go to a bar, they have a few drinks, and some of them don't feel like they're intoxicated at all.
Oh, right.
And they drive home and they get pulled over. Now, if you have a liquor store where someone goes and gets it and takes it home, odds are they're probably not going to drink and drive.
Right.
It'd probably lessen that whole idea. But it's just the setup. The whole thing is just a setup. I don't, I think laws need to change. I don't know how you would change them. I don't know. I don't have any real ideas, I guess, on what would be helpful. But,
right.
But it's just, I don't know. I feel like the whole thing's just a setup.
Yeah.
And, as far as like, it's the same way I feel about the way
the
medical field is.
Yeah.
It's set up to give you certain things, for certain problems. Well, everybody knows that if I have a lot of pain, I can go to the doctor and I can get, probably more than likely, I can get narcotics.
Right.
So that's set up,
right.
Especially for an addict, because suddenly this addict has a lot of pain, even though the problem is you don't know when it's real and when it's not.
Right.
And not everybody can be honest with themselves. They might over exaggerate what, or under exaggerate it. I don't know, but the thing is that with an addict, their first instinct is I want to get high.
Where's my next hit coming from?
I want to get high.
Yeah.
In recovery, that's still a first instinct.
Mm-hmm.
You still have that first thought, like, God, I'd love to just,
right.
drink that pitcher of beer, whatever it is for somebody. But, it's just, that's your first instinct, your first thought, because, you're an addict.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of recovery is that you can get past that first thought,
mm-hmm.
And you can think those things through. And sometimes it's, how do I think it through to the point of, the best way for me is I'm able to think it all the way through to the end.
Right.
You've
programmed your thinking to see,
right.
Okay, if I go down this street, I'm going to end up over here.
Yeah, this is what happens, and
yeah.
this is where I end up. And even for in the beginning, it's difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you can get past that first thought to, the people I'm around are really going to be pissed if I get
right.
high, or I'm going to disappoint somebody, just even those little thoughts are, you have to be able to pull into your mind. It's not always easy.
Yeah. Well, it's like the guardrail on the street. I in Washington State where I grew up driving on mountains, and so those guardrails line the side of those roads on those mountains because hey, if you don't pay attention when you're on the street and you want to avoid that guardrail, I remember driving one time, and this is just all illustrative, and I'll bring it all together for my point. But I remember driving down the mountain, going into town, and going around a corner, going on the road, and being able to look over the guardrail into the dirt down the side of this mountain, and there was this white pickup just angled down on the side of the mountain, just stuck in the woods, because they had decided to jump the guardrail. And all that to say, those guardrails exist for a reason. It's to keep us on that street, to keep us on that road in that direction that we're going in. Because if we want to push beyond that guardrail, we're going to end off in the ditch. Right. And essentially, those thoughts of keeping those loved ones. Hey, I'm going to disappoint them, or I'm going to upset somebody, or they're going to be very angry with me.
Right.
Those are to me I consider those guardrail thoughts.
Right.
Because if I do not want to disappoint my spouse, if I do not want to disappoint my kids, if I do not want to disappoint or get that, I'm going to behave in a way that I'm hitting that guardrail. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go off the ditch.
So, and see, another part of that is that when you first get into recovery, there's some mental health issues,
mm-hmm.
So you're really dealing with a lot, and So it's very hard to be focused the way that you really need to be.
Right.
You know, and then oddly enough, once you get to a certain point in your recovery, you don't really have to focus on a lot of that because it's natural. It starts to play on its own.
Right.
You know, but the point I was trying to make was that, you know, as an addict, I would actively seek a high, no matter how I could get it, cheapest high possible.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes because, you know, money wasn't always available.
So, using insurance.
Absolutely.
You know, hey, I if I know that if I get injured, if strong enough, I'll go to the doctor. They'll give me a prescription for a narcotic.
Right.
So let me break my arm. Let me do this because, you know, that's a strong example, but
that's actually kind of the insanity of it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that probably really happens.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm more often than care to think about.
Right. You know, so as an active addict, you don't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna get it where you're gonna get it, but because of in your active addiction, you used to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in recovery and you come across situations that are similar, it's a trigger. It can happen where you start to feel a certain way about what's going on. You're like, you know, oh my God, I used to do this when I was getting high, you know, and so then you know, so you have a choice: walk away from it, do something different, or go with what you did, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know,
Yeah.
that it can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, being in like having colds or things like that, they're see the insane part of it all
Mm-hmm.
is that you probably look at it like it's a cold, you take care of it, you move on.
Right.
You know, an addict, there's just a mess that goes with it because there could be so many different things that can happen.
Yeah.
You know, but the truth of the matter is that it's the same.
Yeah.
You have a cold, you take care of it, you move on. You know, and in recovery, that's the way you need to look at it. You know, I have a cold, I need to take care of it, and I move on.
I think the difference in that is the avenues of that.
Right.
You know, if you're hearing the door jiggle, that's because there's a little kid trying to get in. And in that sense, you know, with I got a cold, I got to deal with it. I want to, you know, get out of that. The methods therein, you know, what basically, you know, I could take one thing and not think twice about it, you know, in such a way. And so,
and so can I.
Yeah.
You know.
What about the people who can't? Who take a
Right,
pain
there's
medication,
other.
Yeah.
the doctor gives them 30. Then all of a sudden the pain is still there, so they're giving you 90.
Right.
Then all of a sudden there's 240 pills to the point where you're addicted. Now you have legally become addicted to a drug.
Right.
And then they stop. Where do you go? To the streets to continue because
Right.
now you're addicted.
Right. And so that's no. That I'm glad you spoke up. But you know, that is one of those things too. That's where my mind goes on these things, is because for me, like, you know, what is addictive, and where do I find myself? And so, you know, I can go into one avenue and not be impacted by it. You know, I can, you know, I had wisdom teeth pulled out, and they gave me, I don't remember if it was Percocet or Vicodin. You know, I they gave me that, and they said you take half a pill for these many weeks, and only when the pain's there, and then you're done. And they would never renew that prescription. But you know, for somebody who's in addiction, that could be a triggering component in
Recovery.
Recovery, yeah, thank you. But that can be triggering. You know, you go to get your teeth pulled, you go to get in there, and you know, so it's like dealing with colds. We have to be sensitive in like the process of dealing with those things. You know, like when I feel a cold coming on, I like to do what I call nuking my cold. And by that I mean
everybody likes
I get the vitamin C, I get the vitamin D out, I get the zinc, I take the B, I get the Oh, what do they call those little health shots that they have at the grocery store? Those little like micro drinks that are like nothing but like pure vitamins and water. You know, I also then I will burn it out. You know, just trying to nuke it all out because and that works for me. And you know, I'm doing it in different ways. But for someone who's in recovery, they want to nuke it, and it might be more sensitive like in the earlier part of recovery. They get those first cold symptoms, and they're like, oh, man, I know it would work right now, and I'd be better by tomorrow, right? I mean, to me that's where my mind goes to those things, because again, it's that programmed response to deal with those things
Right.
is huge, and I think it is hard. Like you were saying earlier, that you know especially if you go to the doctor for you know whatever it may be, and you get those narcotics, and you know that just the smallest taste of that narcotic in your system is going to trigger, and so it's like you know you're the importance of the importance of communicating that to the medical professional even.
Well, it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like there are some people who can probably get away with not even thinking about it, you know, and then there are others who cannot. You know, and the thing is that so anybody who's watching, I don't want you to think that someone gets sick that you should be like helicopter kind of watching,
Right.
you know. But be aware, you know.
Yeah.
You also can't be ignorant about the whole idea that what might be and what might not be a trigger, you know.
Yeah.
And hopefully that person, if they're in recovery, has shared those kinds of things with you, so that you have a better understanding of what to watch for with that person, you know.
Well,
And anybody that's in recovery, the people who are around them should know
yes.
these are the types of things that will cause a problem for me. Or
And I think too, like if you when you got to go into like the medical side of things, where you have to go to get the prescription, and you know this might be even greater for minors, for if you got like a teenager that's an addict and they're trying to be in recovery, to be their advocate when it comes to talking to the medical professional. And by that I mean, like, hey, no, the kid's like, I don't want that. I can't have that. And the doctor says, well, this is what works. As a parent, you step in and you be like, no, this will trigger them. They can't have that. And like, so, you know, standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody, you know, the recovery one in your life, you go shoulder to shoulder with them in those moments and be like, yes, they told me that this is a trigger. They told me that this is too much. Like they can't take this particular drug or that particular piece of medicine because it will be detrimental to them. And so, you know, one, you come shoulder to shoulder with them. So you advocate for them in the medical field. You know, you advocate like what other options can we do, you know, or even, you know, stand alongside that and like, you know, not helicoptering. I like how you said it. You don't need to be a helicopter over that, but be their advocate, right? Is that
right, or help them manage it, whatever
Yeah.
needs to happen. See, I had an incident where I was in the hospital. I got out. They gave me, I can't remember what it was,
Mhm.
like you said, like Vicodin or something like that, and a few days later, I thought, you know, I should probably put them up.
mm-hmm.
And so I started looking for them, and I'm like, where the hell did they go? Well, I found out my mom took them and threw them away. Right? Well, it pissed me off, you know.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
it
of
really
course.
did, because I was like, well, first of all, it kind of freaked me out because I thought somebody took them.
Right.
You know, and secondly, you know, my thought process was that that's my job.
Right.
You know, that's part of my recovery is being able to go ahead and, you know, and that's not how she wasn't seeing it in a way. I don't think that was malicious or
No.
anything like that.
I'm
She was
helping
just-
him. I'm getting it rid of him.
She was just like, yeah, I'm just going to get rid of them. And, you know, and I was pissed for a little bit because I thought to myself, these are those, so in recovery, you have these little steps that you kind of make, you know,
Mhm.
and success and all that. Well, that was one of those little steps that was, you know, that I could feel good about, you
Right.
know, because
Your
I
discipline.
knew what I was going to do with them.
You did it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I felt like she took that away from me.
She stole your victory.
Right. You know, and you know, and not to mention the fact that it wasn't her.
Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, it felt like she didn't trust me.
Yeah. Well,
so there was that part of it
yeah.
too, and I thought to myself, I have not given you a reason for many years to not trust me in that situation, but then I had to go back to the whole idea, like we were talking last week, or not last week, the week before, about how, you know, I mean, some things just are going to take a lifetime of
Right.
trust, and when it comes to drugs,
Right.
no matter what they are, she's always going to have anxiety
Oh yeah.
about it and doubts, and you know, and I can't fault her for that.
No. Well, and that needs to come back to where we've talked before about having that honest and open communication.
Right.
You know, and this again, this with the medicine, this is a huge part because hey, this is going to trip them up. This is going to make them, they're going to be susceptible to this. So, in situations like that, where you do have the anxiety, your loved one who's in recovery comes back from the hospital with these medicines. They come back from the pharmacy with these things, and you're like, whoa, those are trigger things.
Right.
Okay, this is where communication is very real. You share those anxieties. You say, hey, look, this is what causes me to worry. You know, this causes me some very big concern.
And that would have been the proper.
That would have been the proper way.
Yeah, for her to do
then,
that would have been like, you know what, but I never even knew.
Yeah,
like
right.
it just was taken out of my house.
Well, and that's the thing, like too, like, hey, either you handle this and put them away, and you do it yourself,
Yeah.
or if you're okay with it, I can make them disappear, and that's it. Like, you know, like and that's it. And so it is one of those things where like the end result's going to be the same. It's
Right.
going to be gone, right? But then it's giving you the chance to exercise your victory and be like, okay, you're right. Thank you so much. You know, however, that might be a little bit.
The irony of it all is that that I had those kinds of pills not stashed, but put up already anyhow, that I just never used.
Right.
You know, and but also the part about her where she just kind of wanted to throw them away.
Yeah.
Made me think, you know, yeah, really, why do I have them around? You know, and so I ended up throwing them all away anyhow. But you know, it was just kind of that, you know, that moment of, you know, this is my recovery.
Right.
Let me take care of it. And I don't think there was any.
There's no malicious intent to it.
No, I don't think that she had any thoughts about, you know, well, you know, he can't handle it, or, you know, whatever her thought process was on it,
Yeah.
I guess doesn't really matter. It's just that I don't think that, you know, she was thinking to herself, you know, I'm going to make sure, you know,
Right.
like just this, I don't know how to put that exactly.
No,
but,
that's fine.
But, you know, I need to be able to do those things on my own.
Right.
You know, and the reason I need to be able to do those things on my own is because if I constantly have somebody who intervenes and takes care of that, I never actually learn how to do that myself.
You don't have that muscle.
Right.
You don't have that muscle.
And in recovery, you need to be able to do those things for yourself.
Yeah.
Because somebody's not always going to be there. You know, they're not going to be there 24/7. It's just not going to happen.
Well, let's say
So there's going to be an opportunity that
Yeah.
arises at some point in your recovery, probably numerous times, but at some point there's going to be an opportunity to arise where you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, that's like you know, when we talk about like when we raise kids, you know, we want to teach them how to drive a car. We want to teach them how to walk. We want to teach them how to be an adult, essentially.
Right.
So that, because hey, sooner or later they're going to leave the nest. I'm not going to be there to chauffeur them around.
Right.
You know, I think it's funny. You know, I'm the oldest, and so the moment I was old enough to get my permit, man, I got my permit to drive. I was out the door. I was going to go and do all that stuff. But for many of my group of friends and some of us that had younger siblings, they waited. You know, their older sibling, as soon as they turned 16, got their driver's license, they were driving everywhere. The younger siblings, 17, 18, so
Well, they
one was
have to.
19. They didn't have
Their
to.
older siblings.
The older
are driving
siblings
them
doing it
around.
all for them. And it's kind of the same thing. You have this, you know, if you keep having somebody fold your clothes for you, you'll never learn how to fold your clothes. If you keep someone who's already going to chauffeur you around, you'll never learn how to drive. If you keep having someone who's going to, always going to cook for you, you never learn how to cook. The list goes on. So if you have somebody who's practicing, they're doing all the discipline work for you as far as removing those temptations, removing those the narcotics, removing all that stuff out for you. You'll never be able to stretch that muscle to do that, to exercise that on your own.
And part of that point is that for me, the best part of my recovery is that I'm responsible for my recovery.
Yeah.
And by taking that away from me, you're taking some of that responsibility of my own recovery. Right. And that's not okay. And and not that that's the way somebody would think.
No.
But because your instinct is to protect somebody that you care about, and I get it, but and that's what I mean by recovery and addiction is so complicated,
right? Because
there's so much that you can do that is right, and it might be right at this time, but at this time it's not. Well, it's just
it's that very very individual based, and that's why again communication, being
it's always advocate, evolving.
It really is, and I think that's why this conversation can continue to evolve too. Is because we're like, okay, let's get a bigger understanding on this, and with today's medical focus, we get to learn more about that, and because I think a lot of times, many individuals we just don't think about, we don't think about those things. We don't think about how colds or doctor's visits impact those things. Like I was saying earlier, I had no idea that for users for certain narcotics, certain drugs, that just being sick doesn't even register. And I had no idea. It doesn't exist. And so that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because I'm ignorant of that. In my mind, I'm thinking everybody gets sick. Everybody gets a cold. And I never really think about, well, when an addict gets a cold, what is it like? And
it's not all kinds of drugs. It's
the heavier ones is what I'm kind of referencing in that sense. But I mean that's a huge thing, and I think that especially with like you said, the irony of being under the weather, and where we took this conversation today is that in recovery, I think we need to have an understanding in regards to this, because
I agree.
I think it's important because again the uniqueness of the triggers that are presented for individuals that are in the early stages of that, and where they're learning to exercise that muscle, and how sensitive those first few colds can be.
And the thing is that it can be really dangerous in the beginning of your recovery.
Yes.
But it can also be very dangerous in the in the midst of years and years of your recovery, because the thing is that they say that we're no better and we're no worse than the newcomer, and that's because we're not that far from that mindset. It's a daily thing that we have to work on. To make sure that doesn't occur.
Well, I liken it this way: the moment. If you always feel the need to defend the city, you'll always be protected. But the moment you do not feel a need to protect the city, the moment you don't feel the need to defend the city, if you will, I'm using that as an example there. The moment you don't feel the need to have that active protection is the moment you've lost the battle. And that, health wise, the moment you think you've conquered it and it's done is the moment where your defenses are down and you pay no attention to it. And so kind of like that like what you said earlier is you're always in recovery. You're always in that place. And because what you're teaching yourself is I'm constantly making sure this does not come back up. And that's kind of that same thing with the cold. Like you said with the cold, is that yes, it's very important there at the beginning because of how susceptible it is in the very beginning, but even more so for years down the road, because it just takes one choice to go right back into that place.
And kind of in your illustration there. Without recovery, everything else in my life goes away.
Yeah.
So, that needs to be the number one priority in my life. And sometimes that can be confusing to other people, because they don't fully understand why do you have to have, why do you have to do this all the time? Why do you have to do this all the time? Well, the reason I have to do all this is because that means I can sit here and talk to you.
Right.
Because if I'm not doing that, I'm probably out doing something else.
Right.
And we're not having a conversation, period. So,
right.
So, I mean, it's important, and not everybody understands that, and that's okay. They don't always need to understand.
Right.
But for those who have loved ones who are in recovery or are getting to that point, just understand that it's not that they don't want that time with you, or they don't want to share with you, or they don't, it's that they need to be focused. And and that focus should never go away. I hear a lot of times in recovery, I hear it a lot where people stopped going to meetings, talking to their sponsors, doing any kind of book work, and next thing you know, they're out using, and it might take a little while, but it seems to always happen. When you don't have that maintenance in your life, you kind of fall apart. And it's happened to me. Where I just got relaxed on it, and next thing I knew, I was getting high. And so this time around, I've kind of tried to stay on a regular, like a regular diet of recovery, because sometimes I fall a little bit back, but then I can tell, because I start having a lot of anxiety. I start to feel a little more angry. I start to be a little more snappy, or I just real stubborn and don't want to do something, and for no good reason, and
right.
And so when I start to feel those ways, I realize all of a sudden, like, I should probably do something. So, and my point is, though, is that should be the number in a person who in recovery, and it's not for it is for a selfish reason, but it's for also a non-selfish
reason. Well, it's true, because it's you're creating a disciplined life. You're creating a series of disciplines to live by.
Right. 12 steps.
You're getting those disciplines, and it is and for your health, and not even just for your, and this goes back to before what we've talked about before, where the health of the individual, the health of the community around them, that really is the idea of if I'm in a healthy place, then I can have healthy relationships, and that it's and then that other person gets the benefit of my health. Right. It's like with without going into some medical history, there when certain chemical imbalances in the mind, whether that's depression or thyroid, or just the body's own makeup, and how when the body begins to adjust people's temperament, that it can become unbearable or even difficult for my kids. And so in order for my kids to have a healthy father, I need to make sure that I'm doing things in my life to keep me in that healthy place, right. Mentally, spiritually, physically, that I'm watching myself. And that means doing certain disciplines so that my family benefits from that. And so it's not necessarily selfish. It's I'm not running and exercising every other day just because just solely because I want to look and be healthy, or I want to be strong and have a good heart. No, I want to be a healthy dad for my kids. I want my kids to be able to spend time with me in a very healthy place. And that can go into like the mental side of things, of like where, I want to be a joy to be with my family. I don't want to be that guy that has to, nap out on the couch 24/7 and miss living life with my family. And so in order for me to avoid those things, we do certain disciplines. I have a bedtime. I have a moment when I wake up. I have the meals that I eat throughout the day. I have those moments where I go to exercise. And we put those disciplines in place, and then just depending on the individuals and what their stories are, those stories now come into play where, I just, because of certain things, like with those in recovery is, hey, I know that this area of life affects me this way. And so in order for me to be the man or the woman that my family needs me to be, the person that my friends need me to be that person that the community needs me to be, I'm going to put these disciplines in place so that I don't go back to that.
Right.
And that's kind of where this whole process of adding these disciplines, like you say, is not selfish. In order for me to, I'm putting these disciplines in place so that I can have the welfare of the city. I can have the welfare of my family. I can have the welfare of my loved ones, and it comes from that place. And I think, when it comes to loved ones recognizing that, that they are trying to help with that strength. They are trying. I think that understanding and recognition of their loving the family of the one in recovery, that they watch all these disciplines, they watch all the disciplines that are occurring with the one in recovery, and they recognize that this person's trying to love me. This is an expression of love. These disciplines are an expression of love.
I don't always see it that way, but that's not. I mean, that's from my point of view that it's not important how they see it, because they wouldn't see anything if I wasn't, trying to maintain it. I was while you were talking, I was thinking about music.
Mm-hmm.
So someone, you want to play music to somebody, your family, whatever, and your audience.
Mm-hmm.
If I keep playing that instrument over and over and over, and I never actually tune it or take care of it,
right,
it's gonna wear, and that whole thing is gonna turn into some very funky noises.
Yes.
And so that's the way I kind of see recovery, is that I really need to fine tune it as much as I can, and maintenance it. And
that's a brilliant. Sounds a whole lot better than all the mess I just tried to. That is true.
But as far as like being sick and all that stuff, it really comes down to an individual thing, and it's it's something that everybody has to be aware of, at some point.
Well,
it's okay to be like, hey, are you okay taking this? Like today I got up and I went over to my mom's and I took a bunch of vitamins, to get me going for the day. I guess in my addiction I would have got up and I would have got higher than a kite, and then tried to pretend like, I just don't remember being sick, so I'll say that. But I have different things that I think about, that have nothing to do with getting high. Now for someone else, that's hard. Someone who's taking pills, pills has been part of their addiction. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
Any pill probably can be even an aspirin or a Tylenol can probably be a trigger, because it's that whole.
It's the way it's taken.
It's the process of it, Whereas for me, I've always hated pills, always, and that just hasn't changed.
Right.
So it doesn't bother me as much, But now if you like smoking, that's something, whole different story.
Yeah.
If the doctor handed out little pipes and said, here, smoke this narcotic so you can get better, that would be a problem for me. So I understand the difference, I mean, like for somebody who's had problems with problems with pills.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem no matter what pill it is.
Well, I think too, like going back and using your music analogy, my wife is a piano teacher, and so she is very picky about her pianos, and what's amazing is how each one is played. It varies in its wear and tear,
Right.
and so no two pianos. Yes, you go through the tuning process the same, but as far as the maintenance, it's very individualized. What even with people who play a certain way, what chords are going to be tuned the most? It varies. There's a lot of independent nature on this one, and that all that to say that with individuals in recovery and they're going through the tuning process, it's never going to be the same for every just one person.
No.
Like you were saying earlier, somebody pills for some is a bigger issue than others, or one the inhaling, the smoking is going to be different from somebody who takes pills, and so each one is so individualized in that moment, and being mindful of that. I think as far as the community needs to know is be mindful of that individual approach to dealing with this, especially when it comes to the application of the medicinal side of things. When it comes to when being sick or being hurt and having to visit the hospital, that there is no one way to address something, and that you have to really look at that.
Just so I can make this clear, it's not anybody else's responsibility,
Right.
other than the person in recovery.
Yeah.
To be able to say, I don't think this is good for me, or to be able to manage whatever it is they need to manage. Like, it's nobody else's responsibility. It's appreciated when you have help.
Right.
And if that person reaches out and says, hey, I don't think I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
Perfectly okay for you to be involved.
Be the help,
right,
but don't be their strength.
Well,
Or
I mean,
don't
you
do it
can
for
be
'em.
their strength too, but what I'm saying is that that if you take that responsibility from them,
Yeah.
then that responsibility will never be theirs.
Yeah.
And they need to be responsible for their own recovery and their own.
Yeah. Well, it's my son, we go running in the mornings. My son can't run my 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
My son can't run those 2 miles. He can't run my 2 miles. Please no, my 2 miles. I have to run that myself.
Yes.
And that's really what's important for those in recovery is
I got that right
You're-
away, by the way.
You got that right away?
Yeah,
Good
I
stuff. It's one of those things where no one else can do it for you. No one else can do the work for the one in recovery. They have to be the doer. They have to exercise that discipline. And if they ask for help, if they ask for aid, then great, be there. Be that emotional support, be that advocate, but let them use the strength that they need to grow in.
Right.
And so that'd be really good.
And you can, I don't want to say don't be pushy, but sometimes you have to be, especially if that's a problem for that person. You can be a little pushy and be like, hey, is this going to be okay? Are you sure you're all right with this?
Well,
it's okay. It's just that
Yeah.
you have to understand that if they screw up, it was never your responsibility. It was theirs in the first place.
That's the coaching side of it.
Right.
The coaching side of me is like, hey, are you doing okay?
Right.
You got this.
Right.
I'm on you. You do
Right.
this. You
Right.
can do this.
Right.
And then, but see, again,
And
it's
if
their
you love
strength.
somebody, of course you're going to be,
Yeah.
you're inquiring and everything else. But, again, the responsibility of the recovery is the person in recovery. So you can't be responsible for it. It's just not possible.
No.
Even if you want to be responsible, you can't be.
Oh, and that's the hard part because we love them.
Yeah, sure.
We love them. We want to do it for them.
Yeah.
But if they're going to succeed at life, if they're going to succeed and grow, we can't.
Nope.
We have to restrain from that. And I think
And
recognizing that.
And so as to kind of turn it into this, to the whole purpose of these videos is that, so for the community, it to me, your healthier mind and your self-awareness of the fact that you can't be responsible for that person is a good place for you to be, because you don't want to, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to disappoint yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If that person fails, I'm saying,
Yeah.
You're going to feel that responsibility, that guilt, that all that, and that's not yours to have.
Right.
You don't need to have that. That's not yours. And the reason it's not yours is because the recovery of that person is their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could get your mindset into that and really have that healthy thought process of I'm here to support and help, and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it separates that so
Right.
that you don't, because a lot of times when an addict goes down, everybody goes down with them, you
Right.
know, it happens a lot, you know, and it's because it's a sickness,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think that if we can get people to understand more that it's not their responsibility and they don't have to take that on, that maybe we can make it easier for the addict to come back into recovery.
Yeah.
Because we're already in a healthy mindset, ready to accept them, you know.
Right. Yeah, and we got that strong again. So going back to that being in a healthy state and going forward right there. So that's good.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
ended up somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's good. We're gonna wrap it up here, and we got more coming, and we hope to have some more guests with us. And but thank you so much for being a part of this discussion, and we hope that you get to take away a lot of information from these videos, and that you are better equipped to handle your loved ones and what you're going through. And we hope that you're encouraged in this. So thank you so much. God bless, and we'll see you next time.